He had been working as a private investigator in Montreal. William Hamilton, a rich industrialist, had gotten in touch with him regarding a simple vandalism issue. Nothing to write home about. Not worth hiring a private eye either, just so he can drive for hours on rough roads. But that's how it had always been. The client pays, Carl gets it done. They had set up to meet at the general store, his client's business. Well, actually, the entire village had William Hamilton's name written all over it. When the roads were bad, muddy, or snowed in, it was customary around these parts to close them off. But it was also customary to ignore those signs entirely and drive there anyway. Hamilton never mentioned a road-blocking barrier. Why was it needed here in the back of Beyond? That would, however, be a mystery for another day. Carl had waited long enough for someone to come and raise it. Hamilton is waiting for Carl in the general store. It was time for him to get down to business. Hamilton enjoyed a lavish country house built in the very heart of the northern forests, not too far from here. The local populace was divided when it came to the affluent man. Some saw a wealthy philanthropist dedicated to improving the region's economy. Others, an aging Englishman who would do anything to further his fortunes. And those ones hated him enough to go on about scheming against him. Hamilton had recently acquired a few local businesses, but the last straw was the reopening of a mine, which gave rise to a wave of protests and threats from the Cree people. Given these circumstances, Carl reckoned that a good number of people must be feeling compelled to oppose Hamilton in one way or another. So far, only the industrialist's house had been a target, but soon enough, Carl thought, the target would become the man himself. Carl needed to get out of there. The cold and the pain required urgent care. The driver had taken off. It was still best to check it out and leave nothing to chance. Carl needed help. It was a small, locked box engraved with the letters W.H. Carl thought about taking it. Nothing was to be left to chance. This deep in the country, his last hope was to find an abandoned garage or a farm by the roadside. His life depended on it. It was so cold. Already Carl did not feel his toes anymore. Even better than he had hoped. Carl Faubert had succeeded once more and was now on his way to new adventures. The flames won't grow without some help. Other materials were required. The cold was burning Carl. He would not hold up much longer. He had to warm himself. diligent in his work, always carried his log on him, in which he scribbled down thoughts and leads alike during the course of its investigations. Spread out on a few acres of untouched forest, bellowing caribou, everlasting snow, and undefiled lakes, the Manistan region was no tourist hub. It was said to have been populated for millennia by Cree people, and ever since the industrial era, by the metal mining industry. Jean-Luc Bédard had without a doubt been the closest man in the village to William Hamilton, otherwise known as Uncle Willie. Now wasn't a good time to wander about. Hamilton was still out there. Was running on fumes. Good thing that the general store was close by. The milkman had to drive by every week to fill the bottles. The fresh milk indicated a recent visit. Something fell to the bottom of the box. Maintaining his composure, Carl recalled something from his military training. Wolves always stay away from populated areas. Wait, was it about bears? Carl had no trouble recognizing his employer. He had been killed. There was no need to be a detective to figure that out. But only a detective could have noticed that the killer had to have been very close, that the fatal blow had been given before the victim even realized. Carl knew that Gilles Lachance was in charge of the general store. That made him one of Hamilton's employees. A very angry employee, as Carl could plainly see. What could be inside that envelope? Carl was taken aback. He knew this address. It was said to be the address of the P.O. box for the Canadian Secret Service. The note explained that the garage and the store couldn't be supplied with electricity at the same time. The note explained that the garage and the store couldn't be supplied with electricity at the same time. Hate was in the air. Seems like some villagers barely tolerated each other. Carl was used to strange phenomena, but a chunk of ice like this, as if an iceberg came out of the ground, that was a first. Prince? Carl found a surprise at every turn. Was the camera faulty, or was it a possible lead? Carl felt that the store and its surroundings still held their secrets, and he didn't like to miss out. It was so cold. Already Carl did not feel his toes anymore. Carl wondered what the hell could that thing be. It looked like a man fossilized in ice. All of a sudden, Carl felt like he was pulled inside a world of dreams, a cold, unknown dimension. Somehow, self-control was slipping from his grasp. To all appearances, this was a hunting log. Better yet, a war diary. What could these engraved numbers mean? A fresh path suddenly appeared before Carl. Carl had that feeling you get when you immerse your frozen hands in hot water. What happened? Now at least he knew who the unfortunate man petrified in ice was. Gilles Lachance, the general store's manager himself. The Polaroid, Carl's long-standing and faithful ally, had seen its share of husbands caught red-handed cheating. There's always something out there waiting to be snapped away. That had to be the worst parking job ever. Who was Carl to judge, though? It may be customary to park like that around these parts, or not. The milkman had to drive by every week to fill the bottles. The fresh milk indicated a recent visit. The cold was burning Carl. He would not hold up much longer. He had to warm himself. Jumping from that height was akin to tempting death. Perhaps that man on the snowmobile had seen enough of this world already. A nice picture of the Magasin Lachance store, seemingly taken the day it was first opened. It feels frozen in time, from an era long forgotten. An axe, not too shabby. Carl felt he needed to protect himself. It was a typical shack, just like the ones you hear about in Quebecois legends. Local lumberjacks used it to rest and twice a day eat up their pea soup. Carl never thought he would be dancing with the wolves. It was so cold. Already Carl did not feel his toes anymore. Carl was no electrician, but he could identify a wiring problem when he saw one. According to that log, it seemed like the whole village owed some money to the general store. Carl was far more interested in the bunch of nearby addresses he had just gotten his hands on, though. Carl was no electrician, but he could identify a wiring problem when he saw one. The note explained that the garage and the store couldn't be supplied with electricity at the same time. Staring intently at the controls won't be enough to make that lift budge. The poor thing was out of power. The snowstorm pummeled everything in its path. Carl was not surprised when he heard no tone. Carl felt a chill down his spine and had a terrifying realization. If Hamilton was dead, then who was going to pay him? A radiator without power is as good as a wood stove without logs. At long last, the crowbar was within Carl's grasp. Surely it would come in handy at some point. Given the circumstances, leaving with an empty tank would be a death warrant. Carl had to refuel. The pumps wouldn't surrender their divine nectar so easily. In all likelihood, they had to be switched on from inside the store. The note explained that the garage and the store couldn't be supplied with electricity at the same time. Carl knew straight away where to find the infuriated Gilles Lachance. Any good investigation would have to start there. Carl was beginning to know the store and its surroundings like the back of his hand. The seeker had sought. wintry atmosphere surrounded the house. The soundlessness of the area suggested it was empty. When finding a boot, one wonders what became of the foot. The key, which seemed to be meant for a padlock, bore an inscription reading Cloutier et Fils. A company name. Better keep an eye open. Businesses weren't exactly numerous around these parts. Money in a jar. What a shame. Carl would have loved cookies. The spirograph amused Carl. It was a nice modern toy, aside from being repetitive by nature and completely useless. Still, it found its way into many Quebecois homes. A pay stub for some undoubtedly harsh lumberjack work. Alexandre Blais felled trees and chopped woods for Cloutier et Fils. window left open in that weather? Perhaps something had to be watched. Carl's big fingers prevented him from reaching the key. Someone had been playing with a crossbow here. A very dangerous game. A bolt could hit someone's tire or their eye. It could even kill someone if the aim was right. Without a single window to brighten things up, the inside of the cabin was almost pitch black. Beware of close encounters of meat and furniture. Solitaire, a card game only hermits can truly enjoy. Carl felt depressed at the thought of playing this. Everything was set up for a well-deserved snack. It seemed like the place hadn't been empty for long, but without knowing exactly why, Carl had the feeling no one was coming back anytime soon.